Charlie Kirk is not your friend. He is extremely rich, and he wants you to suffer so that he can cash his checks, which is exactly what he does. He charges, hundreds of thousands in speaking fees, makes a fuck ton of money off of his pack, and then he walks home, laughs his way to the bank, while the people he throws under the bus suffer, and talks about personal responsibility, when the truth is that people make decisions for very, very predictable reasons based on their circumstances. The only way you can't believe so is that if people are, outside of their circumstances choosing to make certain decisions, then the only way to justify that belief is that you think that there are certain people who are inherently more immoral than others, and that divides based on race, which, I don't subscribe to that notion, because the data isn't borne out that when certain communities of people are brought out from their immiseration, the people who are better off to do turn out to be less criminal. So, the richer you are, the less criminal you are, regardless of your race. So it's clear what the solution is. Give people money, especially black people, because black and Latino people are economically immiserated in this country. So give them money, give them the means to succeed, give them education. Yes, give them preferential treatment in hiring for jobs, in hiring in admission for schools, because at the end of the day, they need the help more. And they also have more barriers to entry due to just like the various levels of bias existent in the system. Charlie Kirk doesn't want all of that, any of that. I'd like to make one point abundantly clear, because it's the one thing that I wish Vosh had done a little bit more clearly, but I get he wanted to sound a little more diplomatic here. Charlie Kirk wanted to set aside the label of CRT, passively conceding that CRT is not a legitimate concern, and then wanted to talk about wokeism, and proceeded to spend the rest of the debate trying to use wokeism and CRT as like this weird, even though neither of those things means anything when used by the right, as this weird, like, mutually, like, amorphous blob, so that he could attack CRT through wokeism, because he anticipated that Vosh was actually going to immediately squash the notion that CRT is taught in K-12 schools. He is willfully disingenuous. He should be deplatformed, in my opinion, unless you're, like, more absolute about free speech than I am, which, you could be, and I respect that. But I think that it would be of immense benefit to society if Charlie Kirk was never, ever, ever able to have a platform again on any social media whatsoever, because he is an active threat to the working class. He's an active threat to black, Latino, marginalized, LGBTQ plus women, like literally every marginalized group. He's an active threat to them, because he's fighting to preserve certain basic, steadfast, evergreen American traditions that are founded in our original sins of bigotry. And he's trying to actively erase our ability to reckon with that history in order to make prescriptions for going forward. Vosh put it best. It's because, and this is almost direct quote, it's because of whiny little bitches like me that we had any of those changes. The workers' rights, the Constitution, American Revolution, all of those were enacted by whiny little beta cucks like me, who are constantly whining that things are not good enough. It's off the backs of those people that the improvements that we have, that Charlie Kirk virtue signals all day about being thankful for, come from. All right? So if you want to be thankful for the privileges that you have to be born into a country with a constitution that guarantees you certain rights, because those rights were litigated and arbitrated off the backs of people who were not given those rights and instead were subject to the ownership of slave traders and slave owners, and they are the ones who built all of these structures. Not entirely, but a huge fucking portion of those structures were built by the 1/6 of residents in the original colonies that became the United States that were slaves and were working for unpaid labor because they were the property of another person. So be grateful for that and show your gratitude by fighting for a world in which the descendants of those people aren't serially and perpetually fucked because they have no generational wealth, unlike you and I do, upon which to build lives for ourselves.